Welcome to a new edition of the Neon Jazz interview series with jazz vocalist Rebecca DuMaine. We covered quite a bit, like her latest 2021 CD with the Dave Miller Trio called Someday, Someday, her career in jazz, COVID-19, and so much more. This new CD is done with her dad and is full of warm vocals, boppish piano solos, fresh ideas, and variety. Along with the jazz, she has had successful careers as an actress, on stage, in commercials and voiceovers, and as a teacher. She's been between New York and California and has some great stories to back all of it up. Get to know her and enjoy.
So it sounds like this newest album is kind of the mantra for the ambiguity of when the world will come back with Someday, Someday.
Exactly. Pretty much.
Man alive. Like, we don't know, but we know it's going to be someday.
It will be someday. Literally, that's all I keep saying with everything in my life, right?
Yeah.
When will my kids go back to school? Someday.
Yeah, someday.
Right? When will I teach again on campus? Someday. When can I hug my friends? Someday. Yeah.
Someday. That's it. So you got a very timely album. So talk to me a little bit about this album coming out during this time, and it's this in mind. When all of this happened, I remember last year, it's like, all right, all we ever knew was live music, okay? So you released an album and you can't tour, but all we've known for the last year is that you can't play live music. So what is the thought with this album getting released now?
That's a great question. The great thing about being in California is that I actually do have a weekly gig now. I mean, it's a restaurant gig, it's outside, so that's lovely that I actually get to play because every single indoor venue is closed. So in terms of touring, again, that's the ... It would be lovely for us to be able to tour with it maybe towards the end of the summer, but I really don't know, right? The whole idea behind this was, well, we're in the pandemic, we're stuck, let's make an album, let's do something creative while we're stuck in this place. And I started writing. I didn't ever write tunes. I mean, I did when I was 12. I was a prolific songwriter when I was in 6th grade. But I didn't ever write anything for any of these albums until the pandemic hit. All of a sudden, I started to get creative that way. So 2 of the tunes on this album I wrote.
And then Dave Miller, the band, how was all of that? How did that feel?
So Dave Miller is my dad. I'm not sure if you know that.
No, I didn't. No.
Yeah, so that's pretty cool. So we have, obviously quite a bond, as you can imagine. And and so we get together and work up arrangements for tunes, and we decided, hey, let's get the guys together. Actually, the bass player, Chuck Bennett, has since come ill. He's recovering, but we have a new bass player now. But for this album, we got Chuck and our longtime drummer, Bill, and we were able to record in Oakland, and the guys wore masks, and I was in my booth, and it was also during the time that the fires were happening in California, so there was we couldn't breathe. It was a crazy, confluence of all this crap. Can I say that? It was just a bad, it was just a really funky time of isolation, and it gave us a little glimmer of, okay, we still love to do this, let's do it anyway.
Well, I think about that with, what happened in Texas, and I know during that time we were getting hammered hard with cold, and it's like, no matter what happens, the world's not going to slow down. It's just going to add on top of everything. So ultimately, what do you want the listener that either downloads this album or buys this album to get from this experience?
Oh, that's a great question. So the title track, Someday, Someday, pretty much sums up how I feel about how this has all been going and how we miss people. And so I would love for them to feel like, hey, I'm with you. I gotcha. And pretty much every tune on the album has a little wisp of melancholy. Usually my albums have been pretty sunny because it's been my escape from gloom. And this time I was like, you know what, I'm just going to go into it. I'm going to go into the things that we're all feeling. So I'm hoping that they feel like, hey, I'm not alone. And there's, there's music for this moment. And at the same time, listening to this music can hopefully bring me out of my dark space.
What was the last show you did last year before everything closed down? Do you remember it?
Yeah, I do. It was literally the day before we were asked to shelter in place here in California. So it was at Angelica's in Redwood City. It was actually a quiet audience because a lot of people had already, heard the news that the next day things were shutting down. So it was an intimate night, but it was delightful. And then the next day the world closed.
What do you miss the most about that old world, that old BC before Corona world?
Isn't that funny? I miss hugs. I miss hugging my friends. I've been hugging my family, and that's lovely, but, enough already. Go away. I really miss friends. And I miss being able to see people when I'm on stage, enjoying themselves together. And as I mentioned, I'm seeing a little bit of that right now, which does give me hope. So this bistro, it's a French bistro, and I speak French, and I've actually been giving myself the task to learn a new French tune every other week, which has been really fun and kind of keeps me creative. And I am starting to see, even though they're in masks and they're hanging out, but it's like, people are starting to see each other again, and they're so effusive, so happy to have live music while they're eating, and that does give me hope.
Yeah, I think things are starting to wake up a little bit. Let's go back to the beginnings of your life. Talk to me about where you were born and raised and kind of how the seeds of music began for you.
Absolutely. I was born in Albany, New York, and my parents moved out to San Francisco. I think I was about 3 or 4 months old. My dad got a job out here, and he was a lawyer for many years. And my dad is also a pianist. In fact, the only reason he went to law school was because he got a scholarship. He had gotten into a music school, but he had just gotten married and pressure from the family. So he always had piano as his outlet. So I've been listening to him play. George Shearing is his idol, so I was always listening to Shearing and Bill Evans and all the greats, Nat King Cole, Peggy Lee, Nancy Wilson, from the time that I was tiny. And I played piano up until I was about 12, and my hands are really small. So I switched to the flute. And I played the flute through high school and then realized, actually, funny story, I left my flute on the top of my car when I was driving home, and it fell off on the freeway, and I'm pretty sure the universe was like, it's time.
Yeah,
you're not a flautist. But I sang all through high school. I did theater, and I did musical theater as well. But I didn't want to go into jazz because that was my dad's thing. I loved it. It was the kind of music that I would, I was a kid in the 80s, so we had all of the, MTV stuff, which was great. But when I would get stressed out, I would go into my car and listen to K-Jazz because that just made me feel like I was at home. Yeah. So long story short, I went to college at Duke University and studied drama. I was a professional actress for many, many years. Moved to New York, toured regionally, and worked in New York for a long time. Went back to graduate school, and while I was there, I hooked up with a teacher that I really respected, who turned me on to this voice technique, not for singing, but for actors, which I wound up pursuing, and that's what I teach still to this day. But that particular voice work brought me back to singing and to jazz. It's like I found, this is this thing that I've loved since I was tiny. And I think I was old enough and had enough experience to go, I get it now. I get jazz now. And when I was pregnant with my son, I have 2 kids, it's like it just all fell into my being. And I kind of moved away from the acting world when I moved back out to California and started gigging. And I really learned on the job, right? Because these guys are professional musicians. They've been a trio for a long time, and I came in and kind of became the band leader and just learned on the fly. Took a bunch of lessons, but it was the culmination of, I think, all the acting work that I'd done with the voice work that helped me have the confidence to do it. And so now this is my 6th album on the Summit Records label, and it's very exciting how it all evolved.
So do you miss acting? I mean, when you compare the worlds, I mean, I've only heard little bits about acting, but I can only imagine that the level of people that are involved and the level of stress and all of that has to be vastly different.
It's really funny that you asked that, because I hung up my acting gloves as soon as I moved back to California. I was like, you know what? I'm going to pursue music. I'm going to teach. I've got little kids to raise. And just last week, I signed with an acting agent. It's like something in the universe said, okay, the kids are old enough now. You can go back. So it is a brand new and brave new world. Everything is remote, right? So everything is green screen. You audition from home. There's a lot of self-taping happening. And it's the same kind of thing as the music world, in that you're isolated. You can still get work done, but it's not the same as having, right, the vibration in the room, right?
Yeah.
You can't see people. You can't feel them. You don't feel their breath on you. It's a very weird space. However, it is changing the map of how auditions are done, and it's a lot easier, right? Because I don't have to go run up to San Francisco, right? It's like, okay, there's some convenience. There's a little silver lining in that. So So we'll see. It's interesting.
Yeah, well, I guess it's that whole metaphor, you know, you put the flute on top of the car, it flies away, and then the flute comes back to you in a different form.
Right. Exactly. Exactly. I like that.
Yeah. So you finally found your flute. Maybe it's the Harry Potter cloak for acting. Who knows? But
I love it.
So, what about mentors? Who's other than your father, who's obviously clearly a musician that influenced you? And it makes me think about. I remember interviewing Bob Ringwald, Molly Ringwald's dad, and she was around music her whole life. You know, and she's a singer, and she's an actress, obviously. So there's a lot of parallelisms that I keep coming to. So, who other than your father would have been huge influences on the way that you've become the jazz singer that you are and a musician?
Yeah. Well, people that I've actually studied with, Kitty Margolis, of late, Alexis Cole, who is a beautiful, beautiful jazz singer. She started this whole thing during the pandemic, jazzvoice.com, I think it might be .org, one of those dots, where she's brought a bunch of musicians together with master classes. But Madeline Eastman and Kitty Margolis are both San Francisco jazz artists, and I studied with them when I first moved out here, and they really helped me. But I will say that Kristen Linkletter, who unfortunately, she was my voice mentor for speaking. That's the work that I teach in graduate and undergraduate acting programs. She's the one who really kind of helped me understand the philosophy of finding your own voice, not trying to sound like somebody else. And that helped me when I was studying to think, okay, I don't have to sound like Nancy Wilson. I don't have to sound like Blossom Dearie. I need to sound like Rebecca DuMaine. But I can listen to them and listen and kind of beg and borrow and steal their, their quirks and phrasing, but I need ultimately to make this my own.
What is the most pleasing thing about waking up every day knowing that you're a musician, that you get to create? What do you like the best about it?
It's such a creative endeavor. And for me, the literal vibration of music, of the voice, is so healing. Anytime, and I'm grateful that I get to teach my acting students, feeling vibration in the body is a healing energy. Not to get all poopy weirdo, but it actually, you can feel it. So it makes you feel like you're alive. So I think for me, when I'm singing, it makes me feel the most alive. And this has been such a time of feeling kind of half awake, being isolated and stuck, and there's something invigorating about knowing that I'm going to be able to send those vibrations out into the space.
If you could get into a DeLorean, a jazz DeLorean, and go back in time and see a musician live, who would you see, and then who would you want to talk to after the show's over?
Oh, wow. I would love to have met Irene Krall. who died, I think, in her 40s from cancer. She had such a soulful sound, and I've actually been compared to her a couple of times. She has a very slight vibrato, as do I. It's more of a straight tone to vibrato, and gosh, I would have loved to have asked her after the show, like, how is it to sing knowing that you're sick? She was, the last, I guess, couple of years, she was really sick, and she would still be performing. I just think that's fascinating. And you can hear the depth in her song, probably because of that,
Yeah. When we do return to the stage and the audience, what do you hope we all realize about this long absence away from music? Something that's a residual that we take away. I mean, after 9/11, there was this reinvigoration of everybody. Yeah. But, that ended up fading away. What do you hope? It really did.
I was in New York at the time, actually. It's funny that you brought that up.
I think this one's gone much longer. It's been much more global. Yes. It's been much more hyper sensitive on all of us. We've all been going through trauma. So what do you hope when we do actually come back that we get from this time?
I think that we took for granted in-person music. It's great to download music. It's awesome to listen on your headphones and all that, but there is nothing like being in the space when music is happening, and the magic and surprise of being able to play with musicians and, take risks and being in the room to watch that and feel that. Again, going back to the feeling of vibrations, it's different. It just is. It's awesome to have it on your phone and at home and where you're comfortable, but to be able to feel it and have it change the chemical makeup of your body when you're in the room, there's nothing like that. And I hope that people will appreciate that and appreciate how much musicians have missed being able to do that, Yeah. Maybe give them a few more tips.
Right. Absolutely. So everyone has a perception or their idea of who they think you are, your family, your friends, your fans, your students, but you're living your life. Who do you think you are?
Whoa, that's profound. Who do I think I am? Gosh, I think that I'm a human being trying to figure it out and trying to be me. I mean, I've had so many different iterations of who it is that I thought I was. I spent my young years trying to be more like, be not me, right? Be somebody else so that I would fit in. And then I really thought I knew who I was. Even 10 years ago, I thought I knew who I was. And now I think I'm somebody else. But I think back to that kid who was 12 writing songs. And I'm like, but that's still me. So who am I? I'm still I'm me trying to figure out this crazy journey of life. And I'm trying to express who I am in any given moment in any different way. Right now it's through music. And I try to bring that to being a mom and a teacher. I try to be me, unapologetically, right? Warts and all. I very much have self-deprecating humor because, it's an absurd life. So we have to embrace that,
Yes, absolutely.
I don't know if that answered your question.
No, it does. It totally does. And that wraps everything up. Rebecca, thank you for taking some time out from Neon Jazz. Good luck with the album and the return to life.
Thank you so much. What a great interviewer you are, and I wish you everything good.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening and tuning in to another Neon Jazz interview. We give you a bit of insight into the finest players in New York, California, Kansas City, and spots all over the world, giving fans all that jazz. And thanks to Rebecca for her time, music, and story. If you want to hear more interviews, go to Famous Interviews with Joe Domino in the iTunes Store. Visit NeonJazz at YouTube.com, and for everything Neon Jazz all the time, go to the neonjazz.blogspot.com. Until next time, enjoy the jazz, my friends.
Neon Jazz.